Filip Chytil makes his triumphant return to the Ranger lineup. The Breadman delivers in overtime, and the Rangers have a 3-0 series lead on the Canes.
You're Locked on the New York Rangers, your daily podcast on the New York Rangers. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome back, Blue Shirts fans, to episode number 1065 of the Locked On New York Rangers podcast. I'm your host, John Chick. Just want to thank you guys, as always, for making Locked On New York Rangers your first listen every day. We are free and available on all platforms, including YouTube. And today's episode of Locked On New York Rangers is brought to you by Indeed. There is no I in team, but there is one in Indeed, and that is the hiring platform you need to build yours. Start hiring now with a $75 sponsored job credit to upgrade your job post at Indeed.com/lockedon. Terms and conditions apply. Need to hire? You need Indeed. And we are, of course, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. So another overtime thriller, another nail biter with the Carolina Hurricanes, but the same result. The Rangers find a way to win a one-goal game. They've now done that, obviously, in all three games in the series, the last two in overtime. And I got to say right off the top of the show how much I just always, marvel at this playoff tournament every single season, whether the Rangers are in it and one of the favorites, one of the underdogs, whether they're not in it at all. It's just amazing everything that goes on in this tournament, because think about where we are right now. The Rangers are 7-0 in the playoffs, and that's awesome. Up 3-0 on the Canes. Still work to be done here. It's not over yet, but they're obviously in a good spot. But think about just what a razor-thin margin of difference there is between winning and losing these games. As I just mentioned, 3 straight one-goal games for the Rangers that they win, the last 2 in overtime. If we're on the other side of this and the Rangers came out on the short end of all these games and they're down 3-0 instead of up 3-0, I mean, we're all sick to our stomachs right now and borderline inconsolable. As it is, though, they get all these exciting wins. They're up against a great team. They're a great team themselves. They find a way to be at their best in crunch time, and they're up 3-0, and we're all walking on air right now. I mean, I am. I'm sure a lot of you are as well. But you know what? Bottom line, I can't go another second on this episode without talking about the man of the hour, and that is, of course, Filip Chytil. Now, let me address the elephant in the room real quick here. During the middle of the day yesterday, mid-afternoon or whenever it was, I sent out a tweet about how I didn't think there was any way the Rangers should be making any lineup changes because, to me, Matt Rempe, he's somebody that you're going to sit down late in the game if it's close, and certainly you're not going to play him in overtime. You've still got 11 very capable forwards that you can put out there. Some of you guys, though, made a very great point. It's something that I thought about but maybe didn't consider as much as I should have, and that is, the Canes being home, they've got final change. They can kind of pick on Rempe, situations where he's on the ice and go with some of their top guys. So that was one factor. But the other thing, the bigger thing than that, I didn't even consider the possibility that maybe Filip Chytil is going to be ready for this game. And I should have, because I preach on here, I should take my own advice, that you should never bet against a hockey player when it comes to returning from an injury, no matter what the injury is or how long they've been away, whatever the case might be. There's always a chance that player will find a way to get back on the ice. And obviously, Filip Chytil did that. He plays in his first game in 6 months. Just one of the true feel-good, awesome stories. I mean, in Ranger history, is that too far? I don't think it is, because this guy only played 10 regular season games the first 10, hasn't played since then, makes it back for the 7th game of the Rangers run in the Stanley Cup playoffs. And of course, he was injured against this very Canes team on November 2nd, and I believe it was in this same building. I think that was an away game. I'd have to check back the schedule to know for sure, but obviously he hadn't played since then, got back in the lineup here, and of course he goes in for Matt Rempe. Now, Rempe had played 15 straight games, and he's got his, followers, and people just love Matt Rempe, right? And I totally get it. He didn't do anything wrong to really lose his spot, but it's just a numbers game. And by process of elimination, he pretty much had to be the player that was going to come out of the lineup. You might be able to make a case for this guy or that guy, but overall, if Chytil was going to get back into the game, into the lineup, I think it was always going to be Rempe that was going to come out. And, again, when I sent out that tweet, I'm talking about no lineup changes. I'm thinking, don't put Brodzinski in for Rempe. And I don't think Wheeler's ready to go yet, but I wouldn't put him in for Rempe either. Filip Chytil, though, yeah, I think you pretty much have to put him in the lineup. And again, Rempe hasn't done anything wrong. He's been penalized a bunch of times, but most of those are BS, as we've covered on this podcast. So again, it was just process of elimination, kind of a bad break for him, but I'm sure Matt Rempe will stay ready whenever the Rangers might need him going forward in this playoff run here. I will be honest, I was a little bit nervous about, Filip Chytil being back out there. Obviously, concussions are no joke. He's had more than his fair share of them. But as I've mentioned time and time again on this podcast, because we've talked about this, could Filip Chytil eventually come back? Could even Blake Wheeler eventually come back? What's their status? And, Chytil more so than Wheeler. He's the one that can really go out there and really make a difference. But, yeah, I mean, my big concern was, of course, the concussion history. And I've said over and over again that I have to leave that in the hands, and they haven't asked me, but I have to leave that in the hands of people who, once again, know a heck of a lot more about concussions than I do. Obviously, he got the thumbs up. The team doctor said it was okay, and he was out there and looked pretty good for somebody that hadn't played since the beginning of November, I would say. Of course, he goes back in the lineup. That also means you're going to make some lineup changes. You get the same top six that they've been going with, and I like that. No reason to mess with anything there. We were talking about the possibility of Chytil eventually rejoining this lineup. An idea that I tossed out there was, well, you could put him on the top line with Mika and Kreider, put him at right wing there, move Jack Roslovic down the lineup. I'm glad they didn't do that, though, because Roslovic has played very well. I don't think he had a point in this game, but if that is the case, I want to say that's the first game that he's had in the playoffs where he doesn't have a point at all. And overall, just looks good. He's done a nice job with those two, Mika and Kreider. We had the revolving door at right wing on that line to start the season. Jack Roslovic has kind of solidified it, and I think done better than probably anybody else that they've tried there this season. So I'm happy they stuck with the same top six. Filip Chytil, you don't want to put too much on his plate right away. That's probably also part of the thinking here. But they put him third line left wing. So Wenberg remains at center there. Cackle remains at right wing there. And Will Cooley bumps down to fourth line left wing. And, of course, Matt Rempe comes out of the lineup. And that, probably is the way to go. With Will Cooley, certainly he's capable of being a third-line player. In the long run, I think Will Cooley, very easily could be, a top six player. Rangers don't need him in that role right now because obviously they have a very talented and very deep team. But he's also very capable of playing the fourth line. Typically you get these young players, these high prospects and high draft picks. You don't want to see them out there on the fourth line playing limited minutes and, maybe playing with guys that aren't necessarily the most offensively gifted players on the team. And, a lot of times Ranger fans will kind of resist that if they see a player in that role. But with Will Cooley, I'm totally cool with it. He can play the greasy game too. And he's out there hitting and playing physical hockey. And, Will Cooley as a fourth liner, I mean, that's basically a luxury is the way that I see it. Because, he's shown that he's more than capable of handling a third line role. He's just fine on the fourth line too. And speaking of greasy, I think we're eventually going to get a greasy Will Cooley goal. It wasn't so much in this game, but I do feel like, overall throughout the playoffs, he's been close to getting a couple of those stuff-in goals. And sooner or later, I think one's coming. But back to Filip Chytil here. Again, all eyes are on Chytil. The first time he takes the ice, certainly his first shift. And again, I'll be honest, and I'm probably not the only one. I am a little bit nervous for Phil Chytil here. The concussion history is well documented. But he's out there for his first shift, and he picks up the puck in his own zone behind the Ranger net. He goes up the boards, takes a small hit, nothing crazy, plays the puck back to Gustafsson. Rangers eventually get the puck into the offensive zone, and he goes in there and actually delivers, kind of a small hit of his own, and that was pretty much it, for Filip Chytil's first shift back. But I think this is probably the ideal first shift for Filip Chytil. I mean, I guess the ideal shift would be him scoring a goal. I mean, that would have been absolutely wild. But that's the storybook, crazy storyline there. As far as just kind of a, run-of-the-mill shift, I think this was good. He took a small hit. He delivered a decent hit himself. And I just feel like when you've been missing for that long, you probably want that. You probably want a little bit of contact. He probably helps you get back into the game a little bit. And Chytil actually had some thoughts on that a little bit, after the game when he was being interviewed. He was, all smiles and everything after the game, as you would expect. We'll get into those quotes in just a little bit. But then the biggest play that he made all night, he almost scored right after a Ranger power play ended. Rangers were up 2-1 at this point in the game. It's right around midway through the third period, give or take a couple of minutes either way. But you've got Chytil just making an unreal move, using his speed to get by somebody, makes a ridiculous move. And I thought he was going to score. Kochetkov actually made a really nice play here, poked the puck away from Chytil. I didn't really see the poke check for one reason or another. I see Chytil going across the crease, and I think, man, Kacheko's not exactly going with him here. Chytil's about to just tuck it into the empty net. And I thought he was scoring on this. I really did. I got fooled on this one. I'll be honest, I'm sitting on the couch and my arms are going up. I get to about right here, for those of you watching on YouTube. And then it was kind of like, oh, that would have been amazing. That would have been amazing to see Filip Chytil score a goal in his first game back, and a goal that probably would have, not clinched the game, but you're up by 2 at that point, getting late in the third period and feeling very, very good about your chances. As far as his stats in this game, Chytil's out there for 12.02. He had more ice time than Cooley, Kakko, and VZ, and that's about right. We're not expecting him to lead the team in time on the ice right now. He's still getting back into the swing of things. Also had 1 shot on goal and 1 hit. And we can talk about, everything that he brings to the table and whatnot. But, just from the human aspect of this, because my understanding, and I'm not in that locker room, but my understanding is that Filip Chytil is just a universally very well-liked member of this New York Ranger team among his teammates. And I talked about this in a previous episode, a couple episodes back. I'll repeat it right here, right now, for anybody that might have missed it, or, hey, maybe you just want to hear this again. I just get the feeling, if you're a player on that Ranger team, and you know what Filip Chytil has gone through this season, and you saw him when he was out there for basically the open skate is basically what you could call it. He was out there after practice. It was just him, Jones, and Jake Lecision, the guys that were not going to play in that night's game. And he wipes out on the ice, and he has to be helped off by his teammates. And I think the Ranger players in the locker room saw him being carried off the ice, and what he's gone through. This guy comes back. He comes back from all that. He's dressing for the game. He's out there for warm-ups. Tell me that you as a member of this Ranger team are not ready to just skate through a freaking brick wall at that point, right? That's got to get you fired up. Even if you're not, particularly close to Chytil. And again, it sounds like he is very well liked, and we've talked about how this always feels like a very tight-knit team. But even if you just, sort of kind of know him, maybe Rosovic or Wenberg, those guys haven't been here the whole season. Actually, that was the first time that either of them played with Filip Chytil as a teammate. But even those guys, you got to be ready to skate through a wall at that point when you know what this guy has gone through and how hard he's worked to get back on the ice. And I'll leave you guys with a quote from Filip Chytil. I thought this was awesome. After the game, he says, "This team is unbelievable, what they did without me for a whole season. But I know with me, we can be even better. I just love this team. I love these players. I love everybody in this organization." And yeah, that's just amazing stuff. I'm right there with you, Phil. And, friend of the show, Vince Mercogliano. We've obviously had Vince on a couple of times. He does an awesome job covering this team. He tweeted out after this game, he provided that quote. And then he said that he had never seen Filip Chytil as happy as he was after this game. And that's not very difficult to believe at all. Dramatic win, first game back in the playoffs, chance to win a Stanley Cup. The list goes on and on. There's a lot of reasons to feel good and to be happy if you're Filip Chytil right now. He's also your unsung hero from this game. So we got that out of the way. We're going to keep everything rolling in just a second. I want to shift our attention to another member of the former Kid line. That is Alexis Lafreniere. He is just absolutely killing it in the playoffs, looking like he's going to be the superstar that the Rangers thought they were drafting. We'll get to that and a whole bunch of other stuff as well. First, though, we definitely would like to let everybody know that today's episode of Locked On New York Rangers is brought to you by Policygenius. Policygenius is the country's leading online insurance marketplace. It saves you time and money so you can provide your family with a financial safety net starting today. With Policygenius, you can find life insurance policies that start at just $292 per year for $1 million of coverage. Some options offer same-day approval and avoid unnecessary medical exams. Policygenius helps you compare your options from top companies, and their team of licensed experts is on hand to help talk you through it. Talk to a team of award-winning agents who will walk you through the process step by step. Easily compare quotes from America's top insurers in just a few clicks, to find your lowest price. Check life insurance off your to-do list in no time with Policygenius. Head to policygenius.com/LockedOnNHL or click the link in the description to get your free life insurance quotes and see how much you could save. That's policygenius.com/LockedOnNHL. All right, let's keep everything rolling here for the everydayers. In our next episode, going to be talking about whatever happens between the Rangers and the Canes in Game 4. Also going to be keeping an eye on the Hartford Wolfpack. They had a very dramatic win in Game 3 the other night, went into overtime, and Riley Nash, the veteran, with a tip-in goal, gives the Wolfpack the win. They are now up 2-1 in their best of 5 against Providence. So a chance to close it out actually later tonight, Friday night, at home in Hartford. So we'll see what happens there. And we'll always keep an eye on the Wolfpack. But for right now, yeah, more Ranger hockey. I mean, it's Locked On Rangers. What else are we going to do, right? So let's talk about Alexis Lafreniere and the way he's just excelling in the playoffs. And I kind of want to set the stage here for everything I'm about to talk about. You go back 2 years, and the Rangers had the kid line, and everybody loved the kid line, right? They were a lot of fun, just an exciting group of players. It felt like they really kind of fed off of each other, and they're all very young, very unexperienced, and it just felt like there was a comfort level among those three players where they're not out there with the superstar players and having to maybe defer to those guys. Those guys hit the ground running in the playoffs. There were nights during that playoff run 2 years ago for the Rangers where they were the best line on the ice. And again, it just always felt they were kind of a go-to line and would just give the Rangers a spark many, many times during that playoff run. Lafreniere did a nice job, 2 goals, 7 assists in the 20 games. Again, there were nights where that kid line really delivered for this team. But last year, completely different story for Lafreniere. It's easy to forget this because so many other things happened during that 7-game set against the Devils, which basically turned into a nightmare. But the playoff run was a nightmare for Lafreniere last year, too. He had no points in the 7 games, and not even that, but it just looked like, he was invisible. There were so few times during that series where it felt like he was even close to scoring a goal or even picking up an assist. His rough playoff showing, though, last year kind of flew under the radar because there were so many other things happening. A lot of people were focused on Panarin and how poorly let's just be honest. He had a rough showing in the playoffs last year. Poor playoff run for Artemi Panarin. Only the 2 points in 7 games. Mika and Kreider, if things aren't going well for the Rangers, a lot's going to fall on them, and a lot did fall on them. You had Kane and Tarasenko on the team last year, and what's going on? These 2 big name superstars that we bring in, and they're not doing a whole lot to help either. There was drama. Trocheck and Gallant are yelling at each other on the bench. Gallant was yelling with Drury back and forth in the locker room. I think that was after game 4. So there was a lot going on there. And you have a situation where Lafreniere, his poor playoff showing, again, basically just kind of flew under the radar. Nobody really kind of thought about it or paid attention to it. But it was a really rough showing for Lafreniere. Even this year coming into the playoffs, I think a lot of the focus is on Igor. There's always going to be focus on the goalie. Certainly Panarin looking for his redemption arc. Mika and Kreider, it's kind of a legacy playoff run for those guys, quote unquote. So Lafreniere, again, under the radar a little bit, but man, has he delivered 7 games, 3 goals, 6 assists. He's got at least 1 point in every game of this playoff run for the Rangers, except for game 3 against the Capitals. Obviously, the first 2 goals in game 2, both at even strength. That was awesome. They had a stat last night, and I wish I had it in front of me, but Lafreniere was really up there in terms of the most even strength goals in the league. I believe he was somewhere in like the low teens. I think they said like 15th in the entire NHL. Lafreniere 15th in the NHL in even strength goals for this season. And then that's tremendously impressive. And he had another one, looked like it was going to be the game winner midway through the 3rd period in game 2. Couple of just brilliant passes by Trocheck and Panarin to set up Lafreniere. And of course he finishes it. But there's just that quiet confidence about Lafreniere right now where he's expecting this out of himself, even when with his like goal celebrations. And I don't want to read too much into that. Everybody celebrates their goal a little bit differently. But again, just a quiet confidence, the expectation of himself to deliver, to help this team any way that he can, and to be a heck of a player. And that's what we're seeing from Lafreniere. And I think it's kind of translated to all of us as fans as well. We see Lafreniere come through in these big moments, score these big goals, and it's like, yep, that's about what we expect. I saw a comment in a recent episode. We, recapped game 2, and I didn't really talk a whole lot about Lafreniere, even though he had scored 2 goals in that game. And somebody was like, oh man, no mention of Lafreniere. Yeah, because that's what we expect now. We expect him to do that. And obviously, these games are loaded and there's so much to talk about. But, it's certainly time in today's episode here to give Lafreniere his due. I thought he was awesome. Even on the Panarin game winner, he didn't do anything otherworldly during this shift, but just a lot of good little hockey plays that make the difference and are part of that razor-thin margin that we talked about a few minutes ago of whether you win or lose these playoff games, especially the ones that go into overtime, because at that point, it's anybody's game. But on the Panarin game winner, obviously the Panarin line is on the ice, and Lafreniere, a couple of just really nice little plays here. He had the puck a couple of times during this shift. The Canes actually got a shot. Igor had to make a save, and Forget which defenseman it was. It might have been Trouba, but somebody had to work the puck up the boards, and Lafreniere picks it up in stride in the Rangers zone, just very calmly, very coolly, not Will Cooley, but very coolly skates the puck out of the Rangers zone into the neutral zone. He eventually gains the blue line, took a cut to his left, took a shot at the net, wasn't able to get it. Obviously score on that play, but again, at least got the puck out of his own team zone, looked somewhat dangerous going over the blue line and making the cut that he did. And then the Canes, they briefly get it out of their zone, and it was Trouba this time for sure. The puck goes to Trouba in the neutral zone. He immediately passes across the ice to Lafreniere, and he whiffed on this pass to Lafreniere in the most recent game before this one. But he put it right on the tape here. Lafreniere dumps it into the zone, goes around the boards behind the net, and at that point, Vincent Trocheck and Artemi Panarin took care of the rest, and the Rangers win in overtime. So again, nothing otherworldly by Lafreniere on this play, but just a couple of good, smart hockey plays, things that make the difference in games like this. And the thing I like, too, is that you look at these goals that Lafreniere has scored the last couple of games here, and it even really goes back into the regular season. He's scoring in a variety of different ways. He can score on different types of shots. He can score from different spots on the ice. He can snipe. He can get a dirty goal every now and then, and it's just been a pleasure to watch this. And Lafreniere, I mean, I dare anybody, because fans give each other some bleep every now and then, right? And one of the chirps from other fan bases, whether it's the Devils or the Penguins, whatever it might be. Oh yeah, Lafreniere, he's a bust. Yeah, I dare anybody to try to call Alexis Lafreniere a bust right now. He has become not just a solid contributing member of this team, but one of the more irreplaceable players that they have. I mean, and we can talk about how he's gotten a boost from playing with Panarin. Yes, absolutely 100%. But look at the season Panarin had, right? The best season of his career by a long shot. Well, he's got Alexis Lafreniere out there with him, and I think Laf deserves some credit for that as well. One other thing that I'll throw out there before we move on to some other things. So, Chytil's back. We know that. And in theory, you could have a kid line reunion. And I saw a couple of Ranger fans, I think it was kind of tongue-in-cheek, but they were throwing out the idea of putting the kid line back together, especially because, the Rangers don't have the first shift anymore. So Brind'Amour goes with, Brind'Amour's going to go with whatever line he wants to go with. But the Rangers could just throw the kid line out there together just to mess with him a little bit. Because obviously, they had some big moments against the Canes a couple of years ago in the playoffs. But again, I think most of that talk was tongue-in-cheek. No kid line reunion. You cannot touch the Panarin, Trocheck, Lafreniere combination. And, you have Kakko and Chytil together, so that's at least something. And I thought that line looked all right in this game. And, Chytil obviously still getting back into the swing of things. But yeah, man, Lafreniere, like I said, just taking his game to all new heights, and it's been awesome to see, and just playing with that quiet confidence, and obviously coming through with some big points, some big goals for the New York Rangers. So going to keep everything rolling in just a second. I want to talk about one of my biggest takeaways from this game. It's something that I already kind of knew and already felt, but man, was it on display in this one. And that is the very simple fact that nothing really seems to bother this Ranger team. Whatever situation they're in, whatever the score might be, whatever game and whatever series, now that we're in the playoffs, they just, put their heads down and keep going. And that's an awesome trait to have. And we're going to talk about that in just a second. First, though, we definitely would like to let everybody know that today's episode of Locked On New York Rangers is brought to you by Indeed. There is no I in team, but there is one in Indeed, and that is the hiring platform that you need to build yours. When you're hiring, you need Indeed. Indeed is the hiring platform where you can attract, interview, and hire all in one place. Instead of spending hours on multiple job sites searching for candidates with the right skills, Indeed's a powerful hiring platform that can help you do it all. We streamline hiring with powerful tools that find you matched candidates. With Instant Match, over 80% of employers get quality candidates whose resume on Indeed matches their job description the moment they sponsor a job, according to Indeed Data US. Even better, Indeed's the only job site where you only pay for applications that meet your must-have job requirements. Start hiring now with a $75 sponsored job credit to upgrade your job post at Indeed.com/lockedon. Offer good for a limited time. Claim your $75 credit now at Indeed.com/lockedon. Indeed.com/lockedon. Terms and conditions apply. Need to hire? You need Indeed. Okay, let's go ahead and conclude today's episode. I mean, I could talk for probably an hour in this one if I felt like it, because, I mean, there's no shortage of things to talk about right now, and there's no shortage of reasons to feel good if you're a Ranger fan. But one of my biggest takeaways, and it's not so much a takeaway as much as it is like it's been reemphasized and kind of refortified, if you will, here for all of us. Nothing bothers this Ranger team, man. They're behind. They keep doing their thing. They're winning. They keep doing their thing. It's playoff hockey. And given that that's the case, I'm still nervous watching these games, but I don't feel like I'm as nervous as maybe I would have been last year, 2 years ago, even in different eras of Ranger hockey, before a lot of these guys came into the league. And in some cases, maybe before some of them were born. I mean, yeah, there's guys in their 20s on this team. And of course, the 94 Cup team was 30 years ago. So yeah, it's a whole span of Ranger hockey. But the thing that we all have in common, and it's not just Ranger fans, but it's hockey fans everywhere, you're certainly going to be on the edge of your seat and on pins and needles watching these playoff games because that's just the nature of the beast. But with this current Ranger team, it's less so than with other teams. Both of these last two games, it's intense and it's close and it's competitive. And obviously, either of these last two games, any of the three games really, could have gone either way. But there's just this feeling right now, at least for me, that this team is going to figure it out. They're going to find a way. They're going to be at their best in crunch time when all the chips are down and they need to have that big save from Igor, or they have to find a goal, at some point in the third period to get this game tied, or the game goes into overtime and they have to deliver there, or they need a big penalty kill, or they need a big shot block, anything it could be. And it's easy to say that when your team is 7-0 in the playoffs. But again, they've been doing this all season. This team is always at its best in crunch time when they really need to make a play, when they really, need to have something good happen. They find a way to make it happen. And they just don't seem to get too high or too low, regardless of what's going on in the game. And it's awesome that that's translated from the regular season to when you need it the most. And of course, that's the playoffs. Peter Laviolette at the start of the year was talking about how whoever you want to be in the playoffs, you have to start becoming that team right now. He was saying that in the preseason and obviously early in the regular season. And the Rangers did that. For the most part all season, they kept their foot on the gas. Yes, January was bad, whatever. They're probably better off for going through some struggles there. But the bottom line, again, this team doesn't get too high or too low. They keep doing their thing no matter what happens. And there were a couple of things, in this game where, maybe the Rangers could have felt a certain way to begin with. You had the goalie change from the Canes. They started Freddie Anderson the first two games in the series. They decided to go with Peter Kachekov for this game. What I found interesting here, Brendan Moore apparently said that he would have stayed with Anderson had game two not gone to double overtime. So by that logic, maybe we can expect Anderson in game four. We'll see how they look to play it there. But they go with Kachekov in this game. And I know there were some of us, you can't help yourself because, again, it's the playoffs. We all have a million thoughts going through our heads. And you think back to the playoff series against the Devils last year, Rangers lit up Vanacek in the first two games. I believe they scored 10 goals. One may have been an empty netter, but bottom line, they basically destroyed him. They put Akira Schmid into the game, and all of a sudden the Rangers can't score a goal. Now, I will say now what I said then, that to me was more on the Rangers not doing the things they needed to do than it was Akira Schmid turning into Dominik Hasek, which I don't think he did, despite, media narratives that would say otherwise. But the bottom line, this is just a very different, Ranger team. It's just got a different feel around it. And they switched goalies, and the way I see it, maybe the Ranger players see it this way as well. Yeah, they switched goalies, but that's a win for the Rangers. There's a different goalie. Maybe he plays well. Maybe he plays better. Maybe he makes a couple of nice saves. But you forced the Canes, one of the best teams in the NHL, for whatever reason they did it, to switch from a goalie who's largely considered one of the best goalies in the NHL. And obviously he missed some time with some injuries this season, but he was phenomenal when he got back into the lineup down the stretch, and he was phenomenal in the first round against the Islanders too. You force them to take that guy out of the lineup. That's a win. And again, the other goalie, it's a little bit of an X factor. You don't know how it's going to go, but that's a win. And maybe the Ranger players saw it that way, or maybe they didn't even think about it that deeply. Maybe I'm thinking about this a lot deeper than the Ranger players did. Maybe they don't even care. Whoever's in net is in net, and we're going to go out there and just keep playing the kind of hockey that we need to play. And I think watching this game, it's pretty obvious that the Rangers did that. Nothing really changed for them, and they kept doing their thing. Now, it's not like they lit up Kachekov. They only got 2 goals against him in regulation. But again, they stuck with their brand of hockey, and they got it done in crunch time. The other, adversity kind of thing you could talk about here, and a situation where nothing bothers the Rangers, the Canes game-tying goal. They got that game-tying goal with, I think it was 136 or like 138 to go in the game, somewhere in that ballpark. It was kind of a tough break for the Rangers because I thought that after LaFreniere scored that goal to give them the lead, I thought the Rangers played the final, 10 or 12 minutes of this third period to almost perfection because they stayed aggressive. They continued to get themselves some scoring chances. We talked about the Filip Chytil opportunity that occurred not too long after LaFreniere had scored, and obviously he wasn't quite able to convert. But the Rangers, they got some chances, weren't able to build on their lead, but they also defended very well. Getting through the neutral zone was a chore and a half for the Canes. I thought that once the puck was in the Ranger zone, you'd either have Igor making a nice save, or in a lot of cases, the Rangers would get out of the zone very quickly, at least get it into the neutral zone, skate away with it, block shots, do whatever needed to be done. You look at the Rangers' defensive positioning down the stretch in this game. Their sticks were always in the right spot, disrupting passes, the whole 9 yards. You can't do it a whole lot better than the Rangers did it here. And then, unfortunately, Canes pull their goalie, and they do get the equalizer. And I thought, they got a little bit of a break, the Canes did, because it looked like, Shea took that shot. They're looking for the deflection from Aho. Aho breaks his stick. Somehow the puck, deflects back to Svechnikov. And I mean, hey, they earned the goal. They earned the goal, and they're swarming, and they're doing what they can to get the game tied. And Svechnikov buried it from, the slot there. But it felt like a little bit of a bad break for the Rangers. But regardless, they didn't care. They almost got the game winner with about 30 seconds to go. Kreider got by everybody, got to the net, was not able to convert. But the Rangers, again, it's like water off the duck's back. Whatever, we're in overtime, we'll figure it out. And that's exactly what they did with Panarin getting the game winner. And one other thing, it's another area of the game where the Rangers have had every chance, a lesser team might do this, to crumble, because the Rangers are getting called for so many penalties that at a certain point, it probably starts to feel a little bit overwhelming. We just killed off a penalty. We got to do another one, right? It just felt like this game in particular was a never-ending power play for one team or the other. The Canes go 0 for 5 on the power play. They still don't have a power play goal in this series. The Rangers went 0 for 4 on the man advantage, but the Rangers scored a shorty. And again, this can it can start to feel a little bit overwhelming at times, but the Rangers have so many good penalty killers. And of course, they got Igor, and they find a way to buckle down and get it done, get the penalty killed, and then go right back to work 5v5. So that was awesome too. Again, I do feel like certain teams in a spot like this, and to begin with, not every team has as good of a penalty kill as the Rangers, but I feel like there are certain teams, maybe teams that are kind of inexperienced in the playoffs, that might start to feel overwhelmed, and especially on the road. There's a lot of Ranger fans there, obviously, but the Canes fans are making noise too, and Rangers found a way back on their heels with all these penalty kills to get the job done, and again, prevent the Canes from scoring any goals on the man advantage. And I mentioned the shorthanded goal real quick there. I do want to go over this one quickly before we call it a day here. So, because it's a phenomenal goal, and it's two players that at times have been somewhat maligned by certain members of this fan base, but you've got Chris Kreider forcing a turnover right after the Canes gained the blue line. The Canes briefly got it back, and then Kreider just absolutely steamrolls his opponent. It might have been Aho. I have to go back and check again. But Kreider runs him over, obviously knocks him off the puck. And then Mika Zibanejad wins the 50-50 puck, gets past his opponent at the blue line, goes up the left side. And another high hockey IQ from Mika Zibanejad here. He's up the left side. He's over the blue line. But he knows he's got a defender in front of him. He doesn't really have a path to the net. And he knows he's got to wait for Kreider to catch back up, because Kreider, he delivered that hit. He fell down himself. So Kreider gets back up, and he's zipping through the neutral zone, trying to get to the net. He knows Mika's going to be looking for him. Kreider explodes past a defender himself. And then this play by Mika, just brilliant. Again, he's up the left side here. He's along the boards. Defender has position. At the last possible second, right before he's going to pass, Mika hits the brakes, pulls the puck back to give himself a little bit of a passing lane, and sneaks it through there. And Kreider's on the doorstep, and he backhands it home through the 5-hole. Just an absolutely beautiful goal by two excellent players. I dare anybody to say anything bad about Mika Zibanejad or Chris Kreider right now. Hockeyest guy alive. He's kind of infamous in the chat and on the YouTube comment section. He's always bashing Mika and Kreider. He's got nothing to complain about right now, because the Rangers are 7-0 in the playoffs, and Mika and Kreider are playing phenomenal hockey. And that was on display here. Huge goal, huge moment in the game. The Rangers started to really kind of find their game and pick things up after this goal was scored. And obviously, it wasn't easy. It was a dogfight all the way after this happened, but huge play. And the Rangers able to outlast the Canes and get the overtime winner. Another thrilling win. And 3-0. It's not over yet. Still work to be done here, but it's as good of a position as you can possibly be in after 3 games. And we'll see what happens on Saturday. Can't wait to watch game 4 with all you guys as well. But that will do it for today, guys. Once again, if you'd like to get in touch with this podcast, please send an email to lockedonnyrangers@gmail.com. Once again, that is lockedonnyrangers@gmail.com. Definitely give us a follow on Twitter as well, at LO_NY_Rangers. Once again, that is at LO_NY_Rangers. And definitely subscribe to Locked On New York Rangers YouTube channel. Thanks again, guys. I will see you next time.